Thank you very much, Professor Mahalakshmi and Professor Aditya. And it's always very heartening and enriching to travel from Babudam to academia. And I did my lot in that. And also because what I'm going to present today is partly based on my doctoral thesis, and I'm very happy that Professor Najaf and Professor Aditya, they are here. Monetization, say demonetization in colonial India, and it happened simultaneously through various means, which I'm going to discuss. There are three parts. One is the first part ends with the introduction of the universal currency and coinage in 1835, and the second when the paper currency was introduced in 1861, and finally in 1893 when the government mints were they stopped public coinage. So this is largely the structure. Between 1793 and 1835, the government of Bengal, which was the supreme government of the East India Company, it passed a series of legislations for the currency reforms, and finally it culminated in the introduction of a uniform and universal coinage adopted for the territories of the East India Company. Now, even before the starting of the regulations, promulgation of the regulations, the East India Company also took various measures by slowly assuming and appropriating to itself the money supply by closing various native mints. For example, the mints at Patna, which was called Azimabad, was closed in 1772. The mint of Dhaka, called Jahangirnagar, was closed in 1773, and likewise in Murshidabad, it was closed in 1777. And this series continued, as they say that the Sikka followed the flag. So the territories after territories, they were acquired by the East India Company, and simultaneously the company rupee was introduced. Now, the first official demonetization happened in 1793. I mean, there was a debate on the television that they said, no, this was the first time that demonetization is happening, but it happened in 1793. And the regulation said that after 10th of April 1794, only 19 Sun Sikka, photograph is given here, which is a company's rupee, it's called the Sikka rupee, will be received in the public treasuries or issued therefore. So this was one of the first documented instances of consciously using money as an instrument of power. And the impact was that the currency reforms, which started with this regulation, resulted in demonetization of the native currency and replacing it with the increased supply of the company rupee. Now, the 18th century, there's a study, excellent study by Frank Perlin, who says that wages were being paid in cash as before. We had the instance in the Sultanate period. Even small cultivators in many areas paid their taxes in cash, which they acquired by selling a portion of their crop. Then he further suggests that gimcrack coinages, privatization of mints, and multiplication of both mints and coin types that characterize not only the 18th but also the early decades of the 19th century in relation to the contemporary needs of a commercializing economy. So there were other factors as well. We can go back here. That simultaneously with the multiplication of coinage, there was a need to curb the menace of patta, the role of the money changers and the sarafs, and to fund the large establishment of civil and military expenditure, which the company was obliged to undertake. In certain areas, for example, in Bengal Presidency, there was no copper coinage. Same with the province of Orissa. So in these two provinces, in eastern India, a copper coinage was introduced, which again led to the monetization of sorts. And so this shift from the kind economy to the cash economy, the term given by B.R. Ambedkar. So this, the first place for this shift was the British system of revenue and finance, where they adopted a system where not only land revenue but also various other taxes such as the customs, the salt tax, abkari, sire duties, and so on, they were collected in cash. So not only there was a monetization of the land revenue, but also various other taxes which were levied on different commodities by the British. Then the armies were moved during this period, the Anglo-Mysore War, for example, and various other military engagements of the East India Company. They required that army should be paid in cash. So coming to this very famous Act, Regulation 35 of 1793, which said that henceforth not only all these taxes and the land revenue would be realized in tax, but it also promulgated that whatever money, whatever species are being received in the government treasury are not to be issued out, but they are sent to the mint for recoinage into the siccas. So this was how it was done, first by coercion, the legal coercion, if you may, that all credit instruments, bond, promissory notes, agreement stipulated to be paid in no other specie than the 19 sun sikka. Then there was some inducement also. For example, the minting charges were waived off. And it said that if the metal which is brought in, either in the form of different coins of different denominations and different species, or in the form of the bullion, if it is of the sikka standard, then you don't have to pay any minting charges. If, of course, it was below the sikka standard, then refining charges of 12% was levied. Then also, the treasury operation and the administrative efficiency, not to, as I said, not to issue out the coins which are received in the government treasuries, and simultaneously efforts were taken to augment the output of the government mints, and for that, starting from the early part of the 19th century, minting machinery was imported from Soho in the famous the milling equipments, which tremendously increased the output of the mints. So finally, in 1835, they were able to introduce a uniform coinage for all the territories of the British India. First is the rupee, 1 rupee, then 1 mohar, and here is below is the quarter anna. The second phase, as I said, that it began with the promulgation of the Paper Currency Act of 1861. Before that, what we had was we had this paper currency issued by different banks, and they circulated quite freely in the market. And if I got no, I don't have. What was happening, if it was redeemed by the issuing bank, a portion of it was cut, where usually the number. So that means that it cannot circulate anymore. So this is an unredeemed sort of a specimen of unredeemed paper currency. So there was famous banks like Bank of Hindustan, established in 1770. This is a 20 rupee. This is a Bank of Bengal, another specimen. Bank of Bombay. In fact, Bank of Bombay was the earliest European bank which issued paper currency. So overriding the issues of all these private banks, Act was enacted in 1861, and the Government of India appropriated to itself the right to issue the paper currency. And this is one example, a 20 rupee note issued by under the provisions of this Act. So then the third part was what was happening in the territories which were lying outside the purview or outside the administrative control of the East India Company or the British government. We are talking of the princely states here. So very interestingly, in 1869, the agents, the British agents in different courts, they were asked, and this is a direct quote from one of the government records, The agents in central India and Rajputana might be instructed not to make any written communication to the chiefs on the subject, but to take such opportunities as may occur of discussing the matter individually and explaining to them, A, the capabilities of the mint. Say that we have got, spare capacity and, you don't have to maintain a minting establishment in your princely estate. We'll do this job for you. And they say that if you can also assimilate the weight and fineness of your own coin with that of the sikka, so that there's a homogeneity and there's the ease of exchange between the two species. And then finally, very interesting, read the italicized portion, that the government is willing either to supply the blanks to be stamped by themselves, in case you insist on maintaining a mint within your Raj, or to issue the coins from the government mints stamped with a native device. They said that you give us the design, we'll mint it for you, as an outsourcing. This act was promulgated in 1876, and surprisingly, till 1893, only 4 minor states they bid the bait: Alwar, Bikaner, Devas, 2 branches, senior branch and junior branch, and Dhar. In 1893, the government mints were closed for public coinage, and after 1893, we find only one state which took advantage of the provisions of this act and asked the government mint to mint its coin. Now, when we talk of the monetization, one very important factor here is the mint production and how it is related to the monetization. Any increase in the mint output can directly be linked with a proportionate increase in money use. Though the entire output may not circulate, I mean, some of it might go into hoarding and non-monetary use, like you throw it in a pond, or you scatter in some temple and it's used as a decoration. It was also used for jewelry purpose. So there are various non-monetary use of the money which is in circulation. So not 100% is contributes to the monetization. Now, in its diagnosis of the currency situation of Bengal, the Mint Committee, which was set up in 1792, pointed out that the Calcutta Mint, with its traditional minting techniques, was unable to meet the currency demands. That was even before this regulation was enacted, which said that no other money but the 19th San Sikka. So this Mint Committee had already suggested that the Calcutta Mint needs to augment its output, and so that there's no delay in coining of the bullion sent to the mint. The procedure was that any member of the public could take the bullion or the metal to the coin. The metal was assayed, and an assay certificate was given to the person. And as I mentioned a while ago, if it was below standard, then a refining charge was charged, otherwise there was no charge. And then after a certain period, maybe after 15 days or a month's time, this person was required to come back to the mint, produce the assay certificate, and collect the minted coins, freshly minted coins. So what was noticed by this Mint Committee, that there was a long backlog with the mints for the coining of there was metal which was received for, and metal was assayed also, but it was, there was a long queue. We are not, we are quite familiar with the queues now, these days. So the committee therefore recommended an enlargement of the minting establishment, and by this time, the Industrial Revolution of the 1750s had already revolutionized the mode of coin production in England. And 2 very famous names, one is Matthew Boulton, and the other is James Watt, who introduced the steam engine. So they partnered together and they established a modern mint at Soho in Birmingham with steam-powered machinery. And that, India was one of the recipients of such machinery, and it was supplied in different other colonies also. The Soho Mint undertook the mass production of English copper pennies during 1797, about 4,200 tons of English pennies, and also the minting of copper coins for Madras and Bombay. The mode of production was cheap and involved minimum wastage of metal. The Soho Mint was commissioned to install coining machinery for the Tower Mint in London, at the Royal Mints in Russia, Spain, and Denmark, and also for Mexico. Before it was asked to construct modern minting machines for the Calcutta and Bombay mints, whose modernization took place during the 1820s. Now, if we compare the output of the two mints of Bengal, namely Murshidabad and Calcutta, we find that as against a daily output of 48,000 plus coins by Murshidabad mint in 1722, the daily output of the fully mechanized Calcutta mint stood at 3,80,000 in 1833 against 48,000 coins in 1722. Thus, with the increase in the minting capacity, these mints were turned into factories for coin production and greatly helped in elevating the monetization of Indian society. Similarly, the total value of gold coins in circulation stood at 2.45 crores when it was withdrawn in 1796. Now, this figure is very interesting because the fact that the gold coins were declared legal tender only 4 years before in 1792. Before that, it was not legal tender. And the argument that the gold coins constituted only the elite currency also stands invalidated, as considerable abatement in the demand of the quarter mohurs were recorded in 1795. So quarter mohr, was actually a trading currency and not a currency for used as a store of value. I've got a quote here from the Accountant General of Bengal, which I may skip. So the overall picture of the Indian economy at the end of the 19th century presented a picture of high monetization supported by extensive supply in the form of copper and silver coins, openly coinable at the government mints until 1893, gold mohrs of limited tender, paper currency backed by metallic reserves, bank deposits of the Western type, Indian credit instruments of the hundis, and finally the credit created by Indian bankers and the money lenders. Thank you.